Hey there, you cozy listener tucked under your soft blanket with maybe a fan humming gently in the background. Before we dive into the gritty, frostbitten world of medieval peasants, hit that like button if you're ready for a tale of stubborn survival, and drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from London at midnight California at dusk. It's wild to think we're all connected, sharing this story across the globe. Now, dim those lights, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's slip into a time when winter wasn't just chilly, it was a battle you fought with every shivering breath. Picture yourself in medieval Europe, not in a shiny castle with tapestries and roaring fireplaces, but in a muddy village where the real heroes lived peasants. These folks weren't jousting knights or feasting lords. They were the everyday backbone of the world, scraping by with nothing but grit, clever tricks, and a refusal to let the cold win. Their lives were raw, their nights brutal, yet they found ways to laugh, to endure, to outsmart the frost that wanted to claim them. Tonight, we're diving into how they survived the coldest, darkest winters. Think howling winds, no central heating, and a bed that's basically a sack of crunchy straw. It's a story of human stubbornness, of people who faced nature's worst, and still woke up to chew on a frozen turnip like it was a victory. So settle in, and let's walk through their world where every creak of the wind was a challenge and every spark in the hearth was hope. This isn't the Hollywood version of the Middle Ages with gallant knights and merry banquets. Forget that noise. For peasants, winter was a test where passing meant you didn't die before spring. You're home. A flimsy hut of mud and sticks, the kind of place where you'd hear a squirrel sneeze through the walls. No glass windows, no fluffy duvets, just you, your family, maybe a goat and a fire that's trying its best, but mostly just toasting the toes of whoever hogged the spot closest to it. The cold didn't care about your dreams or your plans. It crept in, relentless, turning your breath into clouds and your fingers into clumsy stubs. Yet these peasants, they didn't just roll over. They layered every scrap of cloth they owned, stuffed moss into wall cracks, and huddled so close you'd think they invented the group hug. They were clever, tough, and maybe a bit smelly, but who's judging when survival's on the line? Their story kicks off with the basics, how they kept the cold from turning them into human icicles. Ready to feel a little tougher just hearing about it? Let's go. Imagine this, you're a medieval peasant and winter's got you in its icy grip. You're in your hut, if you can call it that. A rickety pile of sticks and mud that's about as weatherproof as a paper bag. The wind's howling outside, sounding like some angry spirit who didn't get invited to supper, and it's sneaking through every crack, chilling you to the bone. You're not thinking about Netflix or a hot shower. You're wondering how you'll make it to morning without freezing solid. Welcome to the cold reality of peasant life, where the temperature inside your home is just a smidge less miserable than the blizzard outside. No thermostat to crank up, no electric blanket, just you, a sputtering fire, and a whole lot of stubbornness. Your walls are so thin you can feel the frost's breath on your neck, and the only window is a tiny hole stuffed with animal hide that flaps like it's trying to escape. The fire in the hearth is your lifeline, but it's a pathetic thing coughing out more smoke than heat, unless you're practically sitting in it. If you're across the room, tough luck, you're basically camping in the Arctic with worse snacks. Clothes. You've got a couple of wool tunics scratchy as a bad haircut, and a cloak that smells like it's been living with the goats too long. Layer them up and you're still not warm, just a shivering onion with extra itch. Beds are no comfort, either just sacks of straw that crunch when you move and come with free fleas for company. The cold's not just uncomfortable, it's a predator. Frostbite, hypothermia, those were real risks, especially for kids or the old folks. Waking up with all your toes was a win worth celebrating with a slightly less frozen chunk of bread. But here's the kicker. These peasants didn't just survive, they got creative. They'd pile on every rag huddle with their animals and pray the fire didn't quit. That's the spirit we're diving into next, how they turned desperation into ingenuity, one chilly night at a time. Alright, you're still with me in this freezing medieval village where the wind's biting like a cranky badger, and your only defence is what you're wearing. Forget fashion medieval peasants dressed for war against the cold, and their wardrobe was less about style and more about not becoming a frostbitten statue. Picture yourself pulling on every scrap of clothing you own, layering up like you're prepping for a showdown with winter itself. Your base layer's a linen tunic rough as sandpaper, and probably not washed since the last harvest. Over that goes a woolen tunic heavy and scratchy, smelling faintly of sheep and yesterday's stew. Got another pilot on. Add some sagging leggings that bunch at the knees like they're giving up and drape a cloak over your shoulders. Bonus points if it's patched and reeks of goat. If you're lucky, you've got a sheepskin to fling on top your prize trophy in this battle for warmth. You're not winning any beauty contest, but you're 10% warmer and 90% itchier, and that's a trade you'll take. Footwear. Don't get your hopes up. Boots are for the fancy folks. You're wrapping your feet in rags, maybe stuffing them into wooden clogs that clomp like you're tap dancing on ice. If the cold still sneaks through, you add another rag and pray your toes don't stage a mutiny. Washing this pile of clothes. Good one. Dragging your only tunic to a frozen stream smashing through ice, and waiting days for it to dry or freeze into a sad stiff plank isn't happening. So you embrace the grime. That mix of smoke, sweat and sheep becomes your winter perfume. And here's the genius part, the dirt and grease trap heat. Like a medieval version of a high-tech jacket, just with more character. Hats and scarves are your MVPs, a wool cap, keeping your ears from snapping off a scrap of cloth around your neck holding in precious warmth. Kids. They're swaddled until they waddle like overstuffed turnips, barely able to move but toasty enough to survive. In this world, warmth is the only flex that matters, and every layer's a badge of your stubborn will to outlast the frost. Next, we'll see how their homes, or lack thereof, made this fight even tougher. Now let's step inside your medieval peasant home, if you can call it that. You're hoping for a cosy refuge from the winter's wrath, but what you get is a drafty shack that's basically a wind tunnel with ambitions. These huts built from wattle and daub think sticks woven like a giant basket and slathered with a mix of mud, straw and, yes, animal dung are about as sturdy as a house of cards in a storm. The dung's not for laughs. It's cheap, sticky and insulates better than nothing. But let's be real, these walls are so thin the cold laughs as it sneaks through every crack, swirling around your one-room home like an uninvited guest who won't leave. Privacy. Nope. Warmth. Barely. Character-building misery. Oh, you're swimming in it. The roof's thatched, which sounds quaint until it sags under snow leaks like a sieve, or lets in a squirrel who thinks your dinner's a buffet. Windows. Maybe a tiny hole covered with animal hide, or a wooden shutter that rattles like it's auditioning for a ghost story. Glass is for lords, not you. The floor's just compacted dirt, and when it rains or snows, it turns into a muddy swamp, so you're sloshing through your own home like it's a low-budget marsh. Cold attacks from above, below, and all sides a full-on assault on your body heat. But peasants weren't quitters. They fought back with whatever they had, stuffing moss and old rags into cracks, smearing extra mud and dung on the walls like it's a winter art project. It's not pretty, but it's you versus the elements, and you're not going down without a fight. This is ingenuity born of desperation, a stubborn refusal to let the cold win. Up next, we'll dive into how the frozen ground itself became another enemy, and how they battled it with nothing but straw and grit. You're still shivering in your medieval peasant hut, where the walls are more suggestion than structure, and now let's talk about the floor, or what passes for one. Forget polished hardwood or cosy carpets. Your floor is just the earth packed down like a grudging handshake with the ground. In winter, that dirt turns traitor, soaking up the cold and sending it straight into your bones like an evil spirit with a personal grudge. Step barefoot and it's like walking on a frozen pond each step, sucking the warmth from your toes. Drop a spoon. Good luck, it's now part of the permafrost glued to the ground until spring. This isn't just a floor, it's a battlefield where the cold fights dirty, creeping up through your thin straw mat to remind you who's boss. But peasants, they didn't just curse the darkness or the frozen dirt. They fought back with what they had, which wasn't much but enough to make a difference. If you could scrounge some straw, maybe borrowed from a neighbour's field, you'd spread it thick across the floor, a crunchy barrier against the chill. It wasn't perfect. Straw flattened fast, got mouldy faster, and added a crackling soundtrack to your restless nights. Some folks used dried rushes instead, long grasses piled high, sometimes sprinkled with herbs like lavender to mask the whiff of livestock and despair. Sounds nice. Sure, until the rushes trampled into a damp, flea-infested mess, a living carpet that smelled like a wet dog with dreams of grandeur. Over time, you'd toss fresh rushes on top without clearing the old building, a squishy, smelly ecosystem that was part floor, part science experiment. It wasn't luxury, but it kept you one step above the icy ground, and in a world where losing a toe was a bad Tuesday, that was a win. Next, we'll warm things up by the hearth, the flickering heart of every peasant home. Now let's huddle close to the one thing keeping you from freezing solid in this medieval peasant hut, the hearth. This isn't some fancy fireplace with a carved mantel. It's a rough pit of stones in the middle of your room, spitting sparks and smoke like a grumpy dragon with a cold. It's the heart of your home, the only real weapon against the winter's icy claws, and you treat it like a sacred thing, because it is. The hearth doesn't just give warmth. It's your kitchen, your light, your gathering spot where stories are swapped, and the darkness is held at bay. Without it, you're just a shivering shadow in a world that doesn't care if you make it to morning. But oh, it's a fickle friend. No chimney means smoke fills the room, stinging your eyes and coating your lungs until you're half-human, half-smoked ham. It drifts out through a hole in the roof if the wind's feeling kind, or just swirls around, fumigating fleas and making you wonder if breathing's overrated. Keeping the fire alive is a full-time job. Let it die, and the cold rushes in faster than gossip at a village well. Restarting it. That's striking flint and steel with frozen fingers, coaxing a spark like you're begging a miracle from a saint. Everyone's got a role, kids tossing sticks. Grandma watches the embers, and you pray your one dry log doesn't burn out before dawn. The hearth's warmth is life, but it's also a tease strongest for whoever's hogging the prime spot, leaving the rest of you to shiver and curse. Yet it's more than heat. It's hope. A flickering reminder that you're still here, still fighting. Next, we'll uncover the art of fire, banking the clever trick that kept those embers glowing through the night. You're crouched by the hearth in your medieval peasant hut, the fire's glow, the only thing keeping the winter's icy fingers at bay. But night's closing in, and letting that fire die is like inviting the cold to tuck you in for a permanent nap. Matches lighters. Not in this century. Restarting a fire means fumbling with flint and steel in the freezing dark, your fingers stiff as old leather, praying for a spark while the wind howls like it's laughing at you. That's where fire banking comes in, a clever trick that's half skill, half prayer, passed down like a family secret thicker than your best stew. It's how peasants kept the embers alive overnight, buying precious hours of warmth without wrestling a new flame from scratch. Here's how it works. Before bed, you grab a handful of ash dry, mind you, none of that damp nonsense, and gently bury the glowing coals in the hearth, tucking them in like they're your last hope, because they are. The ash acts like a blanket, insulating the embers so they smoulder just enough to stay alive until dawn. Do it right, and you wake to a pile you can poke at a stick and coax back into a blaze. Do it wrong. You're staring at a cold, dead hearth, and your morning's off to a grumpy, frostbitten start. Every family had their quirks. Some swore by packing the ash tight, others left it loose to let the coals breathe. It was the medieval equivalent of arguing over how to load a dishwasher, except the stakes were your toes. A stray gust or a clumsy sheep stumbling into the hearth could ruin it, so someone, probably you bleary-eyed and cursing, might check the coals in the night. Banking wasn't about conquering the cold. It was about outsmarting it one glowing ember at a time. Next, we'll see how huddling together turned survival into a sweaty, snoring team sport. It's the dead of night in your medieval peasant hut, the kind of cold that makes your teeth chatter like a bad musician. The hearth is doing its best, but it's no match for the winter wind sneaking through the walls. So you turn to your secret weapon, each other. Forget personal space or privacy. Those are lordly luxuries. In this hut, survival means piling together like a human lasagna, everyone from your snoring uncle to the neighbour's kid squeezed into the warmest corner. You're wrapped in every scrap of cloth you own, huddling so close you can smell last week's cabbage on your cousin's breath. It's not cosy, it's desperate, but it works. Body heat is your best defence against waking up frozen to the floor. The setup's strategic. Babies and frail elders get tucked in the middle, cocooned like precious embers, soaking up the warmth radiating from all sides. Stronger folks like you take the edges, acting as human shields against the drafts. Kids squirm between parents, and if Aunt Maud shows up, you scoot over. There's always room for one more. The bed, a shared straw mattress that's flattening under the weight of 3 generations, creaking and poking with every move. Shift too much and you might knock someone into the icy draft by the wall, earning you the title of family villain. It's not fragrant, either hygiene's on hold until spring, so you're all marinating in a mix of sweat, smoke and livestock. But when frostbite's knocking, you don't complain about the smell. These nights aren't just about survival. They're bonding, filled with mumbled stories and muffled laughs under shared blankets. It's human stubbornness at its finest, turning a freezing night into a victory of togetherness. Next, we'll explore how bringing the animals inside added warmth and a whole lot of chaos. You're huddled in your medieval peasant hut, the wind screaming outside like it's got a personal vendetta, and the hearth's doing its best to keep the cold at bay. But there's another trick up your sleeve, or rather in your barn. Welcome to the chaos of bringing the livestock indoors, where your winter roommates include cows, goats, pigs, and maybe a chicken with a questionable sense of personal space. This isn't some quirky village tradition, it's survival math. Animals give off heat, and in a hut where the walls are more holes than structure, every degree counts. Plus, keeping your goat inside means it's less likely to get snatched by a neighbour with sticky fingers. 2 birds, 1 very smelly stone. At night, your hut turns into a living furnace of snorts, clucks, and the occasional hoof to the ribs. Cows, the heavy hitters of warmth, claim prime spots near the walls, chewing cud like they own the place. Goats wiggling close because goats don't respect boundaries, and chickens roost in corners or on rafters, eyeing your hair like it's a nest. Pigs, they just flop wherever they please, probably right where you need to step. The smell's a legend in itself. Think barnyard meats, unwashed socks, a scent that could wake the dead by spring. But you don't complain, because more animals mean fewer frozen toes. It's not glamorous. Step barefoot into a surprise on the floor, or wake to a chicken pecking your ear and you'll wish for a modern motel. Yet peasants knew the deal cold kills, but cow breath warms, even if it's a bit slobbery. This chaotic, stinky huddle was a lifeline proof that survival sometimes smells like a barn and sounds like a pig's snore. Next, we'll revisit how layering clothes turned you into a walking laundry pile fighting the cold, one itchy tunic at a time. Back in your medieval peasant hut where the cold's trying to turn you into an icicle, let's talk about your wardrobe, because in winter, fashion's just another word for don't die. You're not flipping through a catalogue for the latest trends. You're piling on every scrap of cloth you own like you're armouring up for a frostbite duel. Start with a linen undertunic, scratchy as a sack and smelling like last month's chores. Over that, a wool tunic, thick and heavy, maybe 2 if you've got 'em. Leggings sag at the knees like they're tired of life, and a cloak probably borrowed from a sheep's bad day gets draped over it all. If you've got a sheepskin, you fling it on top like a trophy, because in this game, warmth is the only runway that matters. You're a lumpy, itchy bundle, but you're not freezing solid, so call it a win. Shoes dream on. Unless you're a lord, you're wrapping your feet in cloth scraps, maybe jamming them into wooden clogs that clunk like a bad dance move. If the cold still bites, you add another rag and hope your toes stick around for spring. Washing this pile, not happening. Hauling clothes to a frozen stream and waiting days for them to dry or freeze into a crispy tunic sculpture is a fool's errand. So you lean into the grime, that mix of sweat smoke and livestock funk becoming your winter cologne. Here's the kicker that dirt's your secret weapon, clogging the fabric's weave to trap heat, like a medieval insulator. Hats and gloves cobbled from leather scraps or leftover wool are treasures keeping your ears and fingers from snapping off. Kids get swaddled until they're waddling turnips, barely mobile but warm. It's not about looking good, it's about outlasting the cold, and every layer's proof you're tougher than winter's worst. Next, we'll dig into how dirt itself became a survival tool, turning grime into glory. You're still shivering in your medieval peasant hut, where winter's got you cornered and your clothes are a patchwork fortress against the cold. But here's a plot twist: dirt, that grime you'd scrub off in a hot shower today, was a medieval survival hack. Forget hygiene commercials being filthy wasn't a sign you'd given up, it was tactical genius. Every day you trudged through mud sweat and the faint whiff of your neighbour's goat. Your tunics and cloaks collected a crust of natural oils dust and good old-fashioned muck. This wasn't just mess, it was insulation clogging the gaps in your wool's weave like a DIY windbreaker. You smelled like a barn that lost a bet, but you were warmer, and in a world where frostbite was a bad Tuesday, that was a victory worth celebrating. Clean clothes, they were a trap. Freshly washed linen might feel nice for a minute, but it's breathable, letting icy air slip through like a thief. Grimy layers, on the other hand, locked in your body heat, turning your tunic into a medieval Gore-Tex jacket, just with more personality. Bathing was a rare event, soap was for bishops or your deathbed, and washing in a frozen stream was a one-way ticket to pneumonia. So you kept the filth layering new clothes over last month's without a second thought, each stain a badge of survival. Your cloak became a walking diary, that mud from the field, that grease from the stew pot, all telling the story of how you didn't freeze. Nobody cared about the smell, everyone stank, so nose blindness was just life. In this gritty, frostbitten world, dirt wasn't failure, it was fashion function, and a defiant middle finger to winter's chill. Next, we'll crawl into the straw beds that were less about comfort, and more about not freezing to the floor. It's another bone-chilling night in your medieval peasant hut, and you're dreaming of a soft, warm bed. Snap out of it, your reality is a straw mattress, and it's about as comfy as sleeping on a pile of crunchy regrets. These beds weren't the plush feather nests of lords. They were rough wooden frames, if you could afford one, stuffed with a sack of hay straw or old rushes. No memory foam, no box springs, just a lumpy, poky mess that smells like a barnyard took a vow of silence. Toss and turn, and you're serenaded by the crinkle of straw punctuated by a sharp stalk, jabbing your ribs like it's personal. And let's not forget the bonus guests fleas and lice who love this setup as much as you hate it, turning every nap into an itch fest. But here's the thing, those straw beds were lifesavers, not luxuries. They lifted you off the frozen dirt floor where the cold lurked like a thief ready to steal your toes. Piled high, the straw trapped pockets of body heat, especially when you huddled with your family creating a sweaty snoring cocoon against the frost. Sure, it flattened fast, got mouldy faster, and sometimes hosted bugs that seemed to hold council meetings at midnight. Changing the straw was a big deal done a few times a year if you were diligent or when your bed started wiggling on its own. Some folks spread rushes on the floor instead, maybe tossing in a sprig of lavender to fight the livestock funk, but those grasses turned into a muddy, trampled mess quick. It wasn't a 5-star hotel, but it kept you alive, and in a world where waking up with all your limbs was a win that was enough. Next, we'll see how peasants turned their leaky huts into fortresses, stuffing every crack with whatever they could find. You're holed up in your medieval peasant hut, where winter's wind howls like it's got a score to settle, and your walls, flimsy sticks and mud, are leaking cold like a sieve. This place isn't a cosy cabin. It's a drafty shell that's one gust away from giving up. Every night the chill finds new gaps to slink through a frosty poltergeist that slaps you awake just when you're dozing off. But you're not helpless. You're a peasant, and sealing up the house is your crafty rebellion against nature's tantrum, a battle, fought with whatever you can cram into the cracks. You grab moss from the woods, straw from the barn, old rags stiff with history, even clumps of animal hair, anything soft enough to plug a hole gets the call. It's not just patching, it's an art. You stuff every chink with care like you're tucking in a child, knowing one missed spot could let the cold waltz right in. Some folks go big slathering extra mud and dung over the walls outside, standing in the freezing slush muttering, "This is fine," as they smear manure like it's a masterpiece. The roof's another fight. Thatch sags under snow, leaking like a tired old sponge, so you plug holes with cloth scraps or stolen turf, turning your home into a patchwork quilt that's more sad than snug. Doors and windows, if you've got 'em, are just planks or hides flapping in the wind, so you soak cloth in fat to block drafts, adding a whiff of mystery meat to the air. It's a constant war, the cold sneaking past your defences like it's mocking you. But with every stuffed crack you're spitting in winter's eye, proving you're tougher than the frost, with nothing but mud and stubbornness. Next, we'll dive into how sleeping in shifts kept the fire and hope alive through the darkest nights. It's the dead of winter in your medieval peasant hut, and the cold's so fierce it feels like it's chewing on your bones. The hearth's your only ally, but it's a needy one, demanding constant attention to keep its embers alive. Let it die, and you're facing a morning colder than a tax collector's heart with no matches to save you. So you and your family don't even pretend to sleep all at once. You take shifts, a gritty system that's less about rest and more about survival. Half the household stays awake, poking the fire and patching stray drafts, while the other half curls up in a straw pile, stealing a few hours of half-frozen sleep under threadbare blankets. It's not a military drill with bugles, it's a desperate dance to keep the warmth from slipping away. You're on ember patrol, squinting through the smoky dark, prodding the coals to coax a flicker, while a goat rustles nearby. Kids old enough to hold a stick get roped in, learning fast that winter doesn't care about bedtime stories. Grandparents linger by the fire, their creaky joints making lying down a saga, their eyes sharp from years of outsmarting the cold. When it's your turn to sleep, good luck someone's always stumbling around the winds battering the walls, and a sibling's elbow might jab you awake. Rest is a miracle snatched in fits between shivers and snores, but it works. Those bleary-eyed hands keep the hearth alive, and the embers mean you all survive. It's exhausting, sure, but it's family, everyone pulling their weight to beat the frost. Think about that next time you grumble about flipping a thermostat switch. Up next, we'll explore how breathing itself became a survival art, one shallow sniff at a time. You're curled up in your medieval peasant hut, the kind of cold night where the air feels like it's sharpening its knives on your lungs. The hearth's flickering, your family's packed in tight, but even with all that breathing wrong could land you in a world of hurt, deep gulping breaths. That's a rookie mistake, pulling icy air straight into your chest like you're inviting pneumonia to move in. In a time when a cough could send you to meet your maker faster than a bad harvest, peasants mastered what you might call survival, breathing slow, shallow, and strictly through the nose. It's not just breathing. It's a calculated act of defiance against winter's chill, warming the air just enough before it hits your lungs. Picture it, you're tucked under a grimy cloak straw, poking your ribs, a cow snoring nearby. You keep your breaths light like you're sipping air through a straw, letting your nose warm it up to avoid that lung-searing sting. Mess up and gulp a big mouthful of frost. Congratulations, you're hacking up your soul for a week with only grandma's onion tea and a prayer to fix you. Some folks drape a rag or shawl over their face, creating a damp, soggy barrier that traps a bit of warmth gross, but better than freezing from the inside. Kids get schooled early, scolded for panting like dogs indoors because winter's a harsh teacher. It's like a grim yoga class, all focus and no frills with frostbite as the penalty for slacking. Between itchy layers, gassy livestock, and now this breathing trick medieval life's building character you didn't know you had. It's not flashy, but every careful sniff is a small win, keeping you alive one breath at a time. Next, we'll dig into how a full belly became your secret weapon against the cold, one hearty stew at a time. It's another brutal night in your medieval peasant hut where the cold's trying to turn you into a popsicle, and you're clinging to every trick to stay warm. Here's one you didn't expect stuffing your face before bed. A full belly wasn't just about satisfaction. It was a furnace churning through calories to keep your insides toasty. Eating heavy was medieval thermodynamics load up on hearty grub, and your body works overtime digesting generating heat to fend off the frost. It's not about dainty salads or Instagram-worthy plates. It's about piling in food so dense it sits in your gut like a loyal brick burning slow to keep you alive until dawn. Your menu's no gourmet spread. Think thick stews crammed with turnips, onions and parsnips, maybe a chunk of salted pork if the pigs had a bad day. Grains are your lifeline oat porridge that sticks to your ribs, barley gruel or rye bread, so chewy it's practically a workout. If you're lucky, a festival might mean a slice of dried sausage tossed in the pot, but mostly it's brown, lumpy and built for survival. Fatty foods are gold, burning slower than lean meat, giving you a steady trickle of warmth. Parents don't care if you're picky, eat the turnips or shiver all night dreaming of them. It's harsh love, but it works. The downside. A gutful of cabbage might fuel some wild stew-powered dreams, but that's a small price for not freezing solid. This isn't about comfort eating. It's strategy, a belly stuffed with grit to outlast the cold. Next, we'll uncover the genius of hay boxes and heated stones, turning simple tools into winter's unsung heroes. You're shivering in your medieval peasant hut, the cold creeping in like it's got a personal grudge and the hearth's doing its best but can't keep up. Time to pull out some old-school genius hay boxes and heated stones, the unsung heroes of winter survival. No electric blankets here, just pure gritty ingenuity to steal a bit of warmth from a world that's trying to freeze you solid. The hay box is rustic brilliance, a wooden crate lined thick with hay, used to keep food hot for hours. Toss in a pot of steaming stew or porridge, bury it in the hay, and it's like a medieval slow cooker ready for a late-night bite without risking a fire restart. But peasants didn't stop at soup. They realised hay could trap heat for more than just dinner, and that's where stones come in. Before bed, you or the kid who lost the argument grab a flat stone and chuck it into the hearth's heart, letting it roast until it's practically glowing. Fishing it out with a stick because, ouch, you wrap it in rags or tuck it into a clay pot, then slip it into the straw mattress or down by your feet. It's a medieval heating pad radiating warmth that fights the frozen floor for hours. Get it wrong though, and you're flirting with a mini house fire or a bruised toe if you drop it. Done right, it's a small miracle, a pocket of heat that keeps icicles off your nose. These tricks weren't fancy, but they were proof that peasants could outsmart winter with nothing but hay rocks and a stubborn refusal to give up. Next, we'll see how sleeping by the hearth turned warmth into a family strategy, with the fire as your cranky but vital ally. It's the darkest hour in your medieval peasant hut, where winter's cold is a thief that steals your breath, and the hearth is your only lifeline. This smoky, stubborn fire pit isn't just for cooking, it's practically family, the cranky kind that keeps you alive but makes you work for it. Sleeping by the hearth isn't about cozy vibes, it's survival math. The closer you are to those flickering flames, the better your odds of waking up without frost on your eyebrows. So you arrange your family like you're playing a high-stakes game of Tetris, everyone jockeying for a spot where the heat can reach. Babies, elders, and anyone with a cough get prime real estate right by the fire, because they're the fragile ones, the ones you can't afford to lose. You and the sturdier folks fan out from there, layering yourselves like human insulation, your scratchy cloaks and straw mattress doing their best to trap the warmth. It's not about fairness, it's about who needs the heat most. Infants are tiny heat generators tucked close to keep them breathing. Old folks carry the family stories and gossip, so they get the warm spot too. Too close though, and you're risking singed hair or a stray spark landing on your tunic. Too far and you're shivering in the drafty shadows, envying the cow snoring by the wall. The hearth's a temperamental ally spitting smoke that stings your eyes and demands constant feeding, but it's the heart of your home. Every crackle is a reminder you're still here, still fighting. This is where the story of peasant grit burns brightest, huddled by a fire that's as stubborn as you're ready for another frosty dawn. Picture yourself in Boston 1773, where the air's sharp with winter chill and sharper with rebellion. You're not sipping tea by a cosy fire. You're in a city buzzing with defiance where every cobblestone seems to hum with anger against the British crown. The Tea Act's the latest insult, a law that's less about tea and more about Britain flexing its muscle, slapping a tax on your morning brew to remind you who's boss. It's not just the coin, it's the principle, the idea that a distant king can reach into your pocket without asking. You and your neighbours, ordinary folks, bakers, blacksmiths, dock workers, are done with it. You've boycotted, you've protested, but now the stakes are higher. 3 ships loaded with East India Company tea sit heavy in the harbour, their cargo a ticking time bomb of colonial resentment. You feel the tension in the taverns, hear it in the whispers at the market. The sons of liberty, those firebrands of freedom are stirring folks up, and you're caught in the middle, proud, scared and itching to do something. The Governor Thomas Hutchinson, loyal to the king, won't budge. He's ordered the ships to stay put, tea and all, until the tax is paid. To you, it's not just a few crates, it's your rights, your dignity, your future on the line. The cold bites your knuckles as you stand on the wharf, watching the ships bob in the dark water, their masts creaking like a warning. Something's got to give, and you know it's coming soon. This isn't just about tea anymore, it's about drawing a line in the sand, or rather in the icy harbour. So grab your cloak, maybe smear some soot on your face for what's coming, because Boston's about to make history. Next we'll step into the Old South meeting house where the crowd's ready to turn words into action. You're packed into Boston's Old South meeting house, December 16th, 1773, shoulder to shoulder with thousands of colonists, the air thick with sweat rage and the faint tang of winter salt. The room's a furnace of voices, every shout and murmur fueled by the Tea Act's galling injustice. You've walked miles through icy mud to be here, your breath focking in the cold, because this isn't just a meeting, it's a reckoning. Samuel Adams, that iron-willed rebel, stands at the helm, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Speaker after speaker rises, denouncing the king's taxes, the East India Company's monopoly, the whole rotten idea of a distant parliament controlling your life. You cheer until your throats roar, but there's a knot in your gut. Action sounds bold, but Wall's shadow looms large. Outside, the streets are crammed with folks who couldn't fit inside, straining to catch every word. News trickles in Governor Hutchinson's holding firm, refusing to let the tea ships leave without unloading. The crowd's fury crackles like a storm about to break. You're not a soldier, maybe just a shopkeeper or farmer, but you feel the weight of the moment. Adams speaks calm but final. This meeting can do nothing more to save the country. It's no speech, it's a signal. A war whoop splits the air outside sharp as a musket shot. You know what's next. Faces around you harden, some smearing soot, others grabbing blankets and feathers not to hide but to become something new, symbols of defiance. The meeting's over. Words are spent. You step into the twilight heart, pounding ready to join the march to the harbour where the tea and history awaits. Next we'll follow those shadowy figures to the ships where Boston's rebellion takes shape in the cold night air. It's twilight in Boston, December 16th and 1773, and you're slipping through the streets, heart thumping like a drum. The cold bites your face, but it's nothing compared to the fire in your chest. You're no soldier, just a cooper, maybe a tailor, but tonight you're part of something bigger. You smear soot across your cheeks, drape a rough blanket over your shoulders, tuck a feather in your cap, not to fool anyone but to shout defiance without saying a word. You're not you anymore, you're a symbol, a shadow moving toward Griffin's Wharf where the Dartmouth Eleanor and Beaver sit heavy with tea. 342 chests of it, the king's smug tax in every leaf. The harbour's dark water churns below sharp with winter's edge, but there's no chaos, no drunken mob. This is a mission quiet and fierce. You join dozens of others' faces blackened, moving like ghosts through the gloom. No one's shouting, it's all whispers and nods, a shared pulse of purpose. The ships loom ahead, their crews outnumbered and silent, stepping aside as you board. You're not here to hurt anyone, just the tea that hated emblem of Britain's grip. Hatchets gleam in the dim light club's ready and calloused hands. You're not thinking about tomorrow's consequences, just the weight of those crates, and the line you're drawing in the icy night. The crowd on the wharf watches hushed as you and your comrades swarm the decks ready to turn words into action. It's not a riot. It's a statement carved in the cold, deliberate strokes of rebellion. Boston's holding its breath and you're about to make history. Next, we'll dive into the moment those chests hit the water, transforming the harbour into a swirling teapot of revolution. You're on the deck of the Dartmouth, the night air sharp as a blade, the harbour's chill seeping through your soot-streaked blanket. It's December 16th and 1773, and you're surrounded by fellow colonists, all disguised, all moving with a purpose that feels like a heartbeat. Your hatchet bites into a wooden tea chest, the crack echoing like a gunshot in the quiet. The rich, earthy scent of tea spills out, mixing with the salty tang of the harbour, as you and others heave the crates overboard. They hit the water with heavy splashes, 342 chests in all their leaves, swirling into the dark waves like a storm of defiance. This isn't chaos. It's precision, every swing and toss calculated to destroy only the tea, that symbol of Britain's overreach. The crowd on Griffin's Wharf stands silent, awed, as the harbour turns into a giant swirling teapot. No one steals a thing, not a single crate, not a scrap of cargo. This isn't about profit, it's about principle. The British guards nearby don't move, maybe confused, maybe sympathetic, or just wary of the crowd's quiet fury. You work fast, your breath fogging and the cold muscles burning as chest after chest sinks. The ship's crews watch helpless as their cargo vanishes into the black water. By the time you're done, thousands of pounds of tea float in great mats staining the harbour like a bold signature. You slip back into the alleys, leaving no names, only the unmistakable mark of rebellion. Boston's still the night heavy with what you've done, a line crossed a spark lit. Next we'll wake to the morning after, where the city buzzes with pride, fear, and the weight of what's to come. It's dawn in Boston, December 17th of 1773, and you wake to a city transformed. The harbour reeks of salty tea, its waters still swirling with the wreckage of 342 chests dumped last night. You step outside your boots crunching on frost, and feel the air crackle with whispers and wide-eyed stares. News of the tea party spreads like a spark in dry-grass taverns. Hum apprentices gossip and broadsheets fly from printers' hands. You're no hero, just one of the soot-streaked shadows who boarded the ships, but there's pride in your chest, fierce and warm, knowing you struck a blow against the king's tyranny. Patriots toast the act, their voices loud with defiance, calling it a stand for liberty that'll echo across the colonies, but not everyone's cheering. Loyalists clutch their teacups, horrified at the destruction, muttering about reckless rebels crossing a line. Moderates wring their hands, fearing the crown's wrath. Will this spark war? Governor Hutchinson rages in his mansion, his pen scratching furious letters to London, branding you and your comrades traitors. The Sons of Liberty patrol the docks, scolding anyone who dares scoop soggy tea leaves from the water. This isn't about salvage, it's about sending a message. The harbour's a giant teapot, its black waves a testament to your resolve. You hear murmurs of what's next. Will Britain ignore this, or come down hard? In the market eyes meet with knowing glances, a shared sense that something's shifted irreversible. Boston's no longer just a port town, it's a symbol, a fuse lit in the cold morning light waiting for the explosion. Next, we'll face the Crown's fury as Britain's retaliation turns defiance into a rallying cry. You're in Boston weeks after the Tea Party and the air's thick with dread. Words reach London and King George III's fury is colder than the January wind. You hear it in the taverns, Parliament's not letting this slide. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just a protest, it was a slap to the Crown's face. And now the hammer's falling. The intolerable acts, they call them a name that sticks like ice in your gut. First comes the Boston Port Act, a gut punch that shuts the harbour tight. No ships in, no ships out until the tea's paid for. The docks once alive with shouts and sails go eerily quiet, trade choked off like a noose. Your neighbour, a fishmonger, stares at empty nets wondering how to feed his kids. It doesn't stop there. The Massachusetts Government Act yanks away your colony's right to govern itself, handing power to the king's men. The Justice Act lets royal officials skip local trials shipped off to Britain where they'll walk free, and then British soldiers march in redcoats quartered in your homes, their boots heavy on your floorboards, a reminder that rebellion has a price. You feel the Crown's message defy us and will crush you. But something unexpected happens. Instead of cowering, the other colonies rally. Wagons roll in from Virginia, Pennsylvania, loaded with grainfish and letters of defiance. You read them by candlelight, heart-swelling Boston's not alone. The king thought he'd break you, make an example of your city. Instead, he's made you a martyr, a spark that's catching fire from Georgia to New Hampshire. You whisper of unity of resistance, knowing the fight's just begun. Next, we'll see how this punishment forged a new American spirit, binding colonies into a force Britain can't ignore. You're standing in Boston, 1774, the harbour silent under the weight of the intolerable acts, its docks choked by Britain's wrath. Your city's a ghost of itself. Shops shuttered, families scraping by, redcoats glaring from every corner. You expected the other colonies to shrink back, scared off by Parliament's iron fist, but instead something miraculous stirs. From Virginia's tobacco fields to New Hampshire's rocky shores, wagons creak into Boston piled high, with food sacks of corn barrels of fish-smoked meat from Carolina farms. You read letters by flickering lamplight, words of fury and solidarity scrawled by strangers who call you kin. The punishment meant to crush you has lit a fire, turning scattered colonies into a single defiant pulse. In September, you hear of the First Continental Congress, a gathering in Philadelphia, where men like George Washington and Samuel Adams, names once distant, stand shoulder to shoulder. They're not kings or generals, just farmers, lawyers, merchants, but they speak for you for all 13 colonies. You learn they vowed to boycott British goods to stand as one against the Crown's next blow. Taverns buzz with new words, unity, liberty whispered like prayers over tankards of ale. You feel it in your bones, Boston's fight is everyone's now. If the king can choke one colony, he can choke them all, and that truth binds you tighter than any law. Militias drill in town squares, muskets gleaming in the autumn chill, and you know the time for petitions is fading. Britain wanted to make Boston a warning. Instead, they've forged a nation raw and fierce, ready to rise from the ashes of a silenced harbour. Next, we'll journey to a desert where an ancient city whispers of peace, older than empires. Imagine you're trudging through Prue's Soup Valley, the sun scorching your neck, sand crunching underfoot the river, a mere trickle in a sea of dust. It's the 1990s, and you're with archaeologist Ruth Shady, chasing whispers of something hidden beneath these weathered mounds. To the untrained eye, they're just hills shaped by wind and time, but you feel a tingle like the desert's holding its breath. This isn't just dirt, it's Caral, a city older than Egypt's pyramids, sleeping for nearly 5,000 years. You brush away sand, and stone walls emerge precise and ancient, whispering of a people who built wonders when the rest of the world was still wandering. As you dig, the truth hits like a thunderbolt. Carol's not a myth. Radiocarbon tests pin it to 2600 BCE, rivaling Mesopotamia's cradle. You uncover plazas, staircases, pyramids, not tombs, but stages for a civilization that thrived without wheels, metal, or war. You hold a knotted kipu, a cotton net, a condor bone flute, each artifact a story of ingenuity and connection. This wasn't a backwater. It was a beacon, a planned city sprawling over 150 acres. Its people trading fish for shells, cotton for stones, ideas for dreams. You stand among the ruins, awed as Corral rewrites history, proving the Americas birthed greatness, long before anyone guessed. It's not just a dig, it's a resurrection, a voice from the sands saying, "We were here, and we were extraordinary." So, grab a trowel, feel the desert's pulse, and let's uncover how this barren valley bloomed into a marvel. Next, we'll explore the Soup Valley's secrets, where a parched land became a cradle of life. You're standing in the Soup Valley, Peru, where the sun hammers down like it's got a grudge, and the desert stretches out, a cracked, dusty wasteland that looks like life forgot it. The river's a pitiful thread winding through stones like it's barely hanging on. To most, this place screams desolation, barren, unforgiving, a spot the gods might have skipped. But you're not most people. You're with the ancient Corral folk 400-600 years ago, and they saw something else, a canvas, not a curse. They didn't flinch at the sand or cower at the heat. They rolled up their sleeves and turned this parched valley into a thriving oasis, a testament to human grit and smarts that makes your jaw drop. Their secret weapon, the river. They tamed its seasonal floods with clever irrigation channels coaxing water to fields where nothing should grow. You see green sprouts, cotton beans, squash, guava pushing through the dirt like stubborn miracles. Cotton's their gold, spun into nets and cloth traded with coastal villages for fish and shells, tying corral to a web of far-off communities. Their homes built from stone and earth stand firm against the scorching days and rare, brutal rains. You watch them study the stars, timing harvests with a precision that'd make a modern farmer jealous. This isn't survival by luck, it's mastery, a delicate dance with nature's rhythms. No wheels, no metal, just brains and teamwork turning a desert into a hub of life. You feel the valley's pulse alive with possibility whispering of a people who built greatness where others saw nothing. Next, we'll climb Corral's towering pyramids, marvels that rival the ancient world's wonders. You're in Corral 2600 BCE, standing at the foot of the Pyramid Mare, a massive stone giant rising 60 feet above the Soup Valley's dusty floor. It's not some crude pile of rocks, this is a masterpiece stretching 450 feet long, built with no wheels, no metal tools, just human will and ingenuity. You run your hand over the stones, cut with eerie precision, packed with reed bags full of rubble, to shrug off earthquakes that could topple lesser works. These pyramids aren't tombs like Egypt's. They're alive, crowned with temples where fires once blazed under starry skies, reached by grand staircases that pull you upward like a call to the heavens. You feel the weight of a civilization that dreamed big and built bigger. Below, sunken plazas spread out circular and vast like ancient amphitheatres, where thousands gathered for rituals, debates or celebrations. You imagine the crowds, their voices echoing off the stones tied to the cosmos by structures aligned with solstices and stars. Around the pyramids, homes for priests, artisans and farmers fan out, each block planned with a care that screams order and purpose. No war machines here, no blood-stained altars, just a society that poured its soul into building, not destroying. You stand on the pyramid's steps, the desert wind whispering of a people who linked earth to sky, community to eternity, all with nothing but stone sweat and vision. It's humbling knowing these weathered stones have outlasted empires still standing after 5,000 years, telling a story of ambition and harmony. Next, we'll uncover how Corral's peace not war defined its greatness, a rare jewel in a world of conflict. You're walking through Corral 2600 BCE, in the Soup Valley's dusty embrace where the stones seem to hum with a quiet ancient truth. Unlike the war-torn ruins of other early civilizations, Corral's different. There's no clatter of weapons, no grim defensive walls, no scars of conquest. You search the sands and find no swords, no arrowheads, no mass graves. This city, sprawling and grand, was built on peace, a rare jewel in a world often carved by blood. You feel it in the air. Corral's people chose to gather, not conquer, pouring their energy into plazas and pyramids that sing of community, not conflict. It's a revelation that makes you pause, awed by a society that thrived through harmony. You see their lifeblood trade, not tribute. Cotton from their irrigated fields spun into nets flows to coastal villages, swapped for dried fish and glittering Pacific shells. You trace their networks stretching to the Andes for rare stones. Each exchange a thread in a peaceful web that binds distant peoples. Their plazas buzz with life, not war councils hosting ceremonies that unite under shared beliefs. You imagine leaders, not warriors, guiding vast projects, pyramids, rising fields, blooming, all without the whip of fear. No fortresses loom. Instead, open spaces invite connection. Corral's strength wasn't in armies, but in cooperation, a stubborn choice to build together rather than tear apart. You stand among the ruins, the desert wind soft, and feel a pang of wonder in a world of swords. Corral chose songs proving civilization can rise on trust, not terror. Next, we'll hear those songs as Corral's music and rituals weave its people into a timeless symphony. You're in Corral 2600 BCE as dusk settles over the Soup Valley, the desert cooling under a sky blazing with stars. The city's alive not with the clash of war, but with the pulse of music and ritual, its heartbeat echoing across the sands. You hear flutes carved from condor bones, their keening notes rising like the wind itself, and drums stretched with deer hide, thumping low and steady. These aren't mere trinkets, they're crafted with care, tuned to carry across vast plazas, a language of the soul in a world without writing. You stand in a sunken court, its stones amplifying sound like an ancient theatre, and feel the crowd around you, hundreds strong, swaying to the rhythm of something greater. Fires crackle atop the pyramids, their glow-painting priests in woven robes as they chant to the river, the earth, the cosmos. You see feet stamp the ground, voices rise in unison, tying each person to the seasons, the stars, the divine. These rituals aren't just ceremony, they're glue-binding Carol's people in shared reverence. The plazas, broad and open, are stages for harvest festivals, solstice rites, moments when the city becomes a symphony. You imagine music drifting through the alleys, flutes and drums weaving stories of creation, of balance, of a world without war's shadow. No blood stains these stones. No gods demand sacrifice, only harmony celebration, a quiet awe for life's cycles. You close your eyes, the desert wind carrying faint echoes of those ancient songs, and feel Corral's spirit, a city that sang its dreams into eternity. Next, we'll marvel at Corral's engineering, a testament to human ingenuity, in a land that defies life. You're standing in Corral 2600 BCE, the Soup Valley's relentless sun baking the earth around you, yet this desert hums with human genius. No wheels, no metal tools, no beast of burden, just raw ingenuity, and Corral's people built a city that laughs at time itself. You gaze at the Pyramid Mayor, a stone titan stretching 450 feet, its 60-foot height defying the sands. Workers hauled massive rocks in woven reed bags, each one a testament to muscle and cleverness, stacking them with rubble-filled cores to shrug off earthquakes that would have crumbled lesser works. You trace the stones, their edges precise, and marvel at how they've stood for nearly 5,000 years, mocking nature's fury with quiet strength. You walk the city's grid, where plazas and homes align with the stars, a cosmic blueprint born from watching solstices and seasons. Their irrigation channels, carved with nothing but sweat and smarts, funnel the river's trickle to fields of cotton and squash turning dust into bounty. These canals aren't haphazard, they're planned, every drop rationed like gold in this parched land. Sunken plazas, circular and perfect, double as celestial calendars, tracking the heavens to time harvests. You see residential zones hugging ceremonial spaces, a harmony of function and faith. No war machines clutter this place. It's a city of balance built to last for generations. You feel a shiver not from cold, but from awe. Carroll's engineers didn't just survive the desert. They sculpted it into a masterpiece, their stones whispering of a wisdom that modern minds still chase. Next, we'll ponder why this marvel faded its plazas, silenced by the sands of time. You're in Corral 2600 BCE. Its pyramids towering over the Soup Valley, their stones alive with the hum of a thriving city. But fast forward and the plazas are empty, the flutes silent, the sands creeping over what was once a beacon of human will. Corral's fall wasn't loud. No fires, no shattered walls, no graves of the conquered. It just faded like a song trailing off, leaving you to wonder why a place so grand could vanish so quietly. You sift through the dust, searching for clues, and the desert whispers possibilities. Maybe a drought strangled the river, starving the fields of cotton and beans that fed Corral's trade. Without surplus, the nets and textiles that bound distant villages unravelled, leaving the city adrift. Or perhaps trade routes shifted new powers rising along the coast or in greener valleys, luring away the fish and shells that kept Carroll's markets alive. You imagine families packing up one by one, chasing stronger rivers, or new beginnings, their children carrying stories of a great city left behind. Could it have been politics, a rift among leaders, or just exhaustion after centuries of wrestling the desert? Without words carved in stone, you're left guessing. But the departure feels gradual, a slow drift rather than a collapse. The winds buried the temples, dunes swallowed the flutes, and Corral slept for 4,000 years, its stones waiting patiently for rediscovery. You stand among the ruins, the silence heavy, and feel the fragility of even the greatest dreams. Carroll teaches you that no civilization, no matter how wise, is immune to time's quiet pull. Yet its legacy endures, a whisper of peace and possibility beneath the sands. Picture yourself in ancient Greece, where the sun doesn't just rise, it scorches the earth like a baker's oven turned to full blast. You're not strolling through marble temples or debating philosophy with Socrates. No, you're an average soul waking up in a world that's as unforgiving as it is legendary. This is the Greece of sweat-stained tunics, creaky knees, and goats that have more personal space than you do. Before you settle in, hit that like button if you're enjoying this journey, and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from Athens, Ohio, or maybe Athens, Georgia. Now dim the lights, let the hum of a fan wash over you, and let's step into a day that'll make your modern life feel like a 5-star resort. Your eyes crack open, not to an alarm clock's beat, but to the sun's relentless heat turning your home into a clay-baked sauna. You're in a modest house, if you can call it that, walls of sun-dried mud bricks, rough as a farmer's hands, and small windows with no glass, just wooden shutters that barely keep out the dust or the neighbour's nosy goat. The air smells of stale bread and human sweat, with a faint whiff of olive oil lingering from last night's attempt at hygiene. There's no insulation, no air conditioning, and definitely no such thing as a private bedroom. Your family parents, siblings, maybe a cousin who snores like a boar shares this single room, sprawled on thin mats or straw-stuffed pallets. The floors pack dirt cool under your feet, but gritty like walking on a beach that's given up on dreams. You roll off your mat bones, creaking like an old cart because sleeping on straw isn't exactly memory foam. Your pillow, a rolled-up cloak lumpy and smelling faintly of yesterday's chores. If you're lucky, the lice decided to party elsewhere last night, but don't count on it. Those little pests are as Greek as democracy. The heat's already climbing, pressing against your skin like a heavy wool blanket. In summer, these stone walls soak up the sun's wrath and beam it back into your soul. In winter, they're an icebox turning your breath into frosty clouds. Either way, you're up early not because you're chasing some Spartan discipline, but because lying down any longer feels like surrendering to the gods' cruel sense of humour. Step outside and the street's already alive with the clatter of cartwheels and the shouts of vendors hawking figs or fish. It's your newsfeed, your hallway, and your trash dump, all in one, paved with dust and the occasional donkey dropping. You squint against the glare, wishing for sunglasses that won't exist for another 2 millennia. This is your world raw and unfiltered, where every day is a test of grit. And here's the kicker, you haven't even faced the worst part yet. That's coming. But for now, take a deep breath of that dusty air, and let's keep moving through this sun-baked saga. You're up sweating before the roosters have even cleared their throats, and now it's time to face the morning routine in ancient Greece. Spoiler alert, it's less spa day and more survival shuffle. There's no running water, no porcelain sink waiting to greet you. If you're in a city like Athens, you trudge to the public fountain, a clay jar balanced on your shoulder, dodging stray dogs and neighbours who've already started arguing about last night's wine. Rural life, even worse. You're hauling water from a well half a mile away, praying to Poseidon you don't trip and shatter a week's worth of effort. The jar's heavy, its clay cool against your skin, but rough, where it digs into your collarbone. Every step's a negotiation with gravity. Back home, hygiene's a grim ritual. Forget morning showers or peppermint body wash. Those are fantasies for a future you'll never see. You splash your face with cold water, the kind that stings like a slap from Athena. Then comes the olive oil, the Greek answer to everything from cooking to skincare. You rub it over your arms and legs, the scent sharp and earthy like a grove trapped in a bottle. It's not about moisturising, it's about trapping the day's dirt and sweat. Now grab your strigil, a curved bronze blade that looks like it belongs in a butcher's shop. You scrape the oil off, dragging the metal across your skin with a dull rasp, peeling away grime in greyish curls. It's oddly satisfying, like shaving without the razor, but leaves you feeling only marginally cleaner. Glamorous hardly, effective barely. Privacy's a myth. Your family's right there milling about in the same room, arguing over who left the goat's milk out or whose turn it is to sweep the dirt floor. The kids are watching, the in-laws are judging, and the goat's probably chewing on your spare tunic. Hygiene's a group activity and not the fun kind. Teeth. You might chew a twig or rinse with vinegar if you're feeling fancy, but mostly you just hope your smile doesn't scare the Agora's merchants. Body odour's a fact of life, no deodorant, just the faint musk of oil and dust that clings to everyone. If you're wealthy, maybe you dab on some rose oil, but for most smelling fresh means you haven't wrestled a pig today. Your tunic's already sticking to your back, the linen coarse and damp from the morning's heat. You're not clean, not by modern standards, but you're as ready as you'll ever be. The day's chores are calling fields to tend bread to bake, or maybe a philosopher to dodge in the marketplace. You sling your water jar over your shoulder, the weight a familiar ache, and step into the blinding sun. This is just the start, and already your body's whispering, "Good luck surviving till noon." You've survived the morning's heat and that questionable hygiene routine, so now it's time to fuel up in ancient Greece. Don't get your hopes up. This isn't a spread of avocado toast and cappuccinos. Breakfast here is so bare bones, it makes a monk's fast look like a feast. You shuffle to the corner of your mud brick home,